Back on the News VPM, and thanks for staying on. Let's go back now to one of our leading stories. The Q3 crime statistics released today. The acting police minister says while there's been a notable decrease in parts of the country, crime levels are still alarmingly high. I'm joined now by Lizette Lancaster, crime hub manager at the Institute of Security Studies, for some reaction. Lizette, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. Cautious optimism when it comes to the overall national crime picture. Violent crime showing consistent signs of decrease, especially if we're looking at murder, rape, as well as robbery. The minister says, well, you could maybe attribute this to enhanced policing operations. What are these policing operations that have given us this consistent decrease?
Thank you. Yes, we are seeing that it's the 7th consecutive quarter that we are seeing quite sustained decreases in most violent crime and some property crimes. So it is encouraging. We have seen, and the National Police Commission and the Minister often talks about what they term Operation Chanele, and now Operation Chanele 2. There's also Operation Festive Season, that is part of the Chanele operations, that are national operations that take place. You often see those roadblocks over the weekends and starting normally on Thursdays, where they stop cars, they have roadblocks and operations taking place across the country. I think we are seeing successes in Chanele, although we need more than Chanele to really address the stubborn crimes, especially organized crime. But it does assist in the tracking and tracing of wanted people and the confiscation of firearms, the illegal firearms that we hear so much about, and that is driving most of the violence we are seeing, especially when we start looking at the mass shootings that seem to be a weekly occurrence on our streets and in certain hotspots, especially in Gauteng and Western Cape and Eastern Cape.
Yeah. He has expressed concern, particularly of the fact that in this quarter, notably, that there is an increase in the murder of police officials, 80% of them being off duty. Do you think that notable increase has got any relationship with the fact that there is enhanced policing operations, or is there something else at play?
We have heard of the 20% that died on duty. So that is often a sign that, that they are vulnerable at these police operations. Of course, policing in South Africa is a dangerous job, and we have to understand that. But of course, police members also make up members of communities, and very often they live in communities that are in these very hotspots that where community members are generally vulnerable. So there is a very complex story here, that police officers could be targeted for their firearms when they are off duty and on their way home. We know also, because of the psychosocial conditions that they work under, that they're often victims and perpetrators of domestic violence. So that could be some of the reasons for these killings. But largely, we live in a violent society where every day many of us face a violent sort of environment, of which police are part of.
The minister says, I will ask police management to look into this so that they can try and prevent these deaths from happening. Either the minister is just saying that, or he does really believe that police management can play a role here. There's something that they can do to prevent this from happening.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a concern. It's a concern just like any death should be a concern on our streets and in our communities. So they could be looking at, the carrying of firearms under certain conditions, especially if people live in dangerous areas. There could also be just a psychological and enhanced support for police members and the trauma that they face on a daily basis. But yes, operations need to be well planned, well organized, and people should be protected at these during these operations.
On the gender-based violence side, 909 police members to the detective services over the past year, saying that's one example of the allocation and the approach that police are taking towards gender-based violence and femicide. Is that a good move?
Yes, I think what we have seen, one of the successes in the SAPS in the recent years are the specialized units dealing with gender-based violence and sexual offences. So these dedicated units are playing a very large role in the crime against women and children. And we are seeing some of the higher detection rates coming out of these units. So this is encouraging, but of course, with gender-based violence, the more attention there is on it in the media, and the more reporting we will see, because it's notoriously underreported, even for offences perpetrated by strangers. You know, people do not feel comfortable coming forward to the criminal justice system. They fear the stigma, not just by police members, but also their families. So there needs to be far more done. And we have seen quite a lot of progress made with strengthening of these psychosocial services, again, to victims of gender-based violence, but we also have heard of tremendous funding cuts that have plagued the NGOs that work in this field.
Paying particular emphasis to the integrated crime violence strategy, saying we're going to pay attention to the implementation of this, and to that end, on the 1st of March, or the 6th of March, I beg your pardon, we will be assembling a MINMAC between national, province, as well as local government, so that we align on the implementation of this particular strategy. Is this a new intervention? Is the minister telling us something that has not been done by his predecessors that they are now going to do in terms of this approach?
Look, the integrated national violence and crime strategy, sorry, I'm butchering the name right now, it's been a long day, but has been around in different iterations since 1998. So we know that we need a more coordinated response to crime and violence. We know that the police alone cannot do this, whether it's in gang areas, illicit mining areas, or in our homes where gender-based violence is so rife. Because a lot of these issues in the hotspots or in the areas that are plagued by persistent violence has more than just a criminality issue. It's got an issue of a developmental issue where unemployment is rife and alcohol plays a large role, and parents need more support. You know, children are left behind alone because they can't afford childcare when they have to commute to work long distances away for long hours. So this is not new, but we hope that there's a renewed effort to call all these community safety members. But it's not just a community safety mandate. It is a whole of society mandate, many different government departments. The trick here will be to make sure that safety becomes a performance indicator for all these role players across the departments. And that is our hope, because without that, you know, people get stuck in their jobs and they do not see safety in a developmental and way. That needs to happen in communities.
The minister also seeking, I suppose, to address what has been raised in the State of the Nation address, which tells us that, I mean, what the president would have given us partly would be his input that he would have had in that particular speech as far as the deployment of the SANDF and into the tackling of organized crime, and particularly in those areas where there are gangs-related killings as well. He says, let me be clear that this deployment is under the command of the SAPS and in support of their operations in particular location. Does this address, I suppose, some of the apprehension that some communities might have about this deployment?
Yes, look, this is never, it hasn't really worked in the past. The minister has indicated that lessons have been learned. The command will be under the SAPS and they will be in a supportive role. And so under these circumstances and the alarmingly high levels of violence, mass shootings we are seeing, we understand why they are being deployed. But as long as this is not seen as anything but a short-term strategy that goes hand in hand with some of the things I've mentioned, the implementation of some of the integrated crime prevention strategies, as well as an almost reset of the policing in those areas where we have intelligence-driven, prosecution-led types of operations going after the kingpins of networks, whether they are traditional gangs in these areas or these illicit mining groups and syndicates that are just taking over and hijacking some areas, as we've seen in Gauteng. So there needs to be a lot of intelligence, a lot of planning, very tight planning and coordination for this to be a success. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it's being done differently than in the past.
Lizette, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That's Lizette Lancaster, the Crime Hub Manager at the Institute for Security Studies, for some reaction to the statistics released by the acting police minister. We turn to this now.